but he is making an observation here about the way the world operates. Bribery may get people what they want, but the Bible condemns using it. In Exodus 23:8, it says, "Take no bribes, for a bribe makes you ignore something that you clearly see." And that's what it's supposed to do. Ignore something that they clearly see or know for sure. A bribe makes even a righteous person twist the truth. He who covers and forgives, verse 9, he who covers and forgives an offense seeks love, but he who repeats or harps on a matter separates even close friends. Now, when you see that he seeks love, your mind, my mind, went to 1 Corinthians 13, where it says love, 13 and 5, where it says love in an amplified version. God's love in us does not insist on its own rights or its own way, for it is not self-seeking, it is not touchy or fretful or resentful, it takes no account of evil done to it, it pays no attention to a suffered wrong. Now, this is what this is referring to. He who covers and forgives, or better, he who covers a transgression seeks love, and he who repeats a matter separates his friend. In other words, a person who is always harping about it and talking about it is a person who separates friends. Forgiveness is necessary to any relationship. When we refuse to remember an offense against us, we are seeking love and friendship. If we insist on digging up past grievances, we only succeed in alienating friends. Disregarding the transgressions of others is evidence that our love is being perfected and we're growing up spiritually. So forgiveness is necessary to relationship. No matter what the relationship is, a husband and wife, friends, siblings, forgiveness is necessary to building a strong bond of relationship. Rebuke is more effective for a wise man than 100 blows on a fool. Now, a simple rebuke makes a deeper impression on a person who has wisdom than a severe beating on a fool. Now, usually people who are sensitive or who have feelings do not need harsh forms of discipline. Usually words will do it. But those who are unfeeling and indifferent require harsh forms because it is hard for them to admit that they are wrong or that they have done anything wrong. So rebuke is more effective for a wise person than blows on it's just comparing the two. You can rebuke a wise person and they will receive the rebuke and become wiser. A person who is a fool, even if you beat him, you can't beat it out of him. You know? An evil man seeks only rebellion, therefore a cruel messenger will be sent against him. Now the evil man is unwilling to submit to authority, and he is determined to have his own way. Therefore, the cruel messenger who will be sent against him may be the arresting officer sent by the king, or it may be the messenger of death. And this can be understood in the fact that, and we, you know, when I started out teaching in Proverbs, I told you that it is a very good book for young men. And this is a good example right here for young men, young women as well. But this is a good example here, is that if a person is unwilling to submit to authority, and especially when you're dealing with dealing with children, dealing with your sons, young men, young women, if they're unwilling to submit to authority, and this would be good advice that I would give a young person, if you're unwilling to submit to authority, then what can possibly happen is there either, as my apostle always said, is either going to be prison or the grave. And that's kind of, but in that setting was, if they didn't submit to authority, the officer of the king was probably going to come and put them in jail, or they would be killed. But there's a broader sense of that, is that it is very important to submit to authority, especially as a young person who have godly parents, it is really especially important to listen to your parents, because they give you wise counsel and instruction, because that will keep you, because like I would tell my daughter-in-law where my grandson was coming, let his father instruct him. Don't try to, to protect him from the instruction of his father, because I know that you're his mom and you love him very much, and you understand that that's your baby. I said, but when he gets up there out in the street, the police officer is not going to know that that's your baby. They're not going to even care that that's your baby. When he hasn't learned to submit to authority. Let him submit to the authority of his father to give him instruction and wisdom. Because if he is not disciplined and he get out there in the streets and acts crazy, you can't go up there and tell him that he's my baby and he really didn't mean it. They really don't care. Really do not care. So that's important. Let a man meet a bear robbed of her cub rather than a fool in his folly. When I read this, I always think of my father before he died. When I was really young, he used to always say, "Don't help me, help the bear." Don't help me, help the bear. In other words, a bear robbed of her cubs is fierce and unmanageable, but she is not nearly as dangerous as a fool in a fit of temper. A fool is someone who is either denies the... Now, keep in mind that when I'm talking about a fool, I'm not talking about how sometimes y'all call people fools. And because they're acting silly, okay? But when the Bible is talking about, we're talking about fool here, we're dealing with a person who does not submit to God, who is someone who either denies the reality of God or refuses to obey his command. He is not submissive to counsel and is easily annoyed. Psalms 14:1 says, "Only fools say in their heart there is no God. They are corrupt and their actions are evil. Not one of them does good." Whoever rewards evil for good will not depart. Whoever rewards evil for good, evil will not depart from his house. Now a curse rests on the house of any man who repays a kindness with injury. And this truth is best illustrated and seen in David's life. He rewarded Uriah's integrity and faithfulness with evil. David repaid his loyal servant, General Uriah, with treachery, and as a result brought misery upon his house. Now that in 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 9 through 12, if you want to look there, we can see this reality of this. But David, and many of us know the story about Bathsheba. This is involving Bathsheba, David and Bathsheba. The Bible story we all read. In chapter 12, and let's start at verse 9. It says, and this is Nathan who came to David and tells him gives him this story about a man taking another person's lamb and using his own. And David says, who is the man? Go bring him here. He deserves to die. But he tells him that man is you. But in verse 9 he says, why have you despised the command of the Lord to do evil in his sight? You have killed Uriah the Hittite with the sword. You have taken his wife to be your wife and have killed him with the sword of the people of Ammon. Now therefore the sword shall never depart from your house, because you have despised me and have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. Thus says the Lord, behold, I will raise up adversity against you from your own house, and I will take your wives before your eyes and give them to your neighbors, and he shall lie with your wives in the sight of man, of the son. For you did it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel, before the sun. So, whoever rewards evil for good, evil will not depart from his house. The beginning of strife is like releasing water Therefore, stop contention before a quarrel starts. When a hole develops in a dike, in a dam, the water rushing through it enlarges the hole rapidly. It is the same way with quarrels. Minor disputes have a way of growing into a major proportion. But if you deal with it while it's a minor dispute and it's insignificant, then you can stop the dam from bursting. Otherwise, it will be plunged into a full-blown war. So this is saying that when the strife begins, deal with it right there. Don't let it build up. Acquitting the guilty and condemning the innocent both are detestable to the Lord. God hates miscarriage of justice. To acquit the guilty or to condemn the innocent is equally detestable to him. Our court system is filled with this today. But men will give an account for all of it when they stand before God. The guilty get locked up, the guilty go free, and the innocent get locked up. It's called technicalities. A minor technicality both ways. A technicality, they did it, but because of a technicality, they get off. And another person, they didn't do it, but a technicality, and they stayed locked up. So our court system is dealing with that even now. Justice moves slow in our system. Verse 16, of what use is money in the hand of a self-confident fool to buy skill and godly wisdom when he has no understanding or heart for it? A person, there's two understandings here. A person is a fool to go to great expense to get an education if he or she doesn't really mean business. It's kind of like, now I'm not calling anybody a fool, okay? It's kind of like what they call them, professional students. Yeah, that's because they don't have a goal. They're just going to school. And they go to school, if they go to school, they don't have to work. Now, I know going to school now is a means for some people, but back in the day, many of them just went to school. They became professional students, so they, excuse not to work, but because they didn't have goals in their life, what they wanted to do. To be a good learner, you need to be motivated. You must have a mind to learn. A fool should not spend money for wisdom when he doesn't have the ability to grasp it, the things in the first place. He thinks he can buy wisdom as if it were a loaf of bread. Doesn't realize that he must have an understanding heart. The Bible teaches us that wisdom is the principal thing, but in all you're getting, get an understanding. So if you don't have that capacity for that, then you're kind of wasting your money. A friend is always loyal, and a brother is born to help in time of adversity. A friend loves at all times. A true friend loves in adversity as well as prosperity. Often it takes hard times to show which friends are genuinely loyal. A true friend is constant. A brother is born for adversity. That is one of the greatest privileges of brotherhood, and that is to be at one side when that person needs you the most. A real brother helps in a time of stress. So a lot of that is very self-explanatory. A friend loves at all times. If you have a true friend, you're a blessed person. A true friend, and a brother or a relative who is there in the time of adversity. That's what true friendship and family is really like. It's poor judgment to guarantee another person's debt or to put up security for a friend. Now, on the tail of that, this one is, okay, sometimes, people really do a lot of things for friends that are not wise decisions. But this one comes on the tail of this, and it says, this verse modifies the previous verse by showing that love should not be without discernment. In other words, we need to use wisdom. It would be a case of bad judgment to agree to guarantee a friend's debt in the event that he should default. Any man who needs a surety is a bad credit risk. Surety is a cosigner. So any person who